You're listening to the DownShift podcast, taking you trackside for all things motorsport. We're four mates from Melbourne breaking down the races, the drama, and everything in between, all with a little banter and a lot of passion. If you love motorsport and cars as much as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always on the grid with us. And if you really want to join the team, leave us a 5-star review and support the show through Patreon for exclusive content and bonus perks. So it's lights out, drop the clutch, and let's get racing. And welcome to the Downshift. We've got another week to wait for the next race. So we're talking about the championship picture and how it's looking with both the drivers and the teams. Who's looking strong, who's underperforming, and we'll get into talking about some early title predictions as well. Huppy, I know you've got some pretty strong thoughts in regards to how the constructors and drivers are going. So how about you kick us off?
Hello, everyone. Good to be back and getting stuck into Formula One info. Championship standings so far, I think pretty much as expected from the end of pre-season testing. I don't think there's no huge surprises yet. I mean, we've obviously seen a couple of rounds with new track surface at Shanghai, which has complicated a few teams and their setups. Wet weather in Melbourne, which has rolled the dice for a few teams. But we see Lando Norris leading the Drivers' Championship, which is, I think, is what most people expected to see going into the season. Max in second, which is exactly what I predicted on this podcast at the start of the season, so I'm happy with that. Will it stay that way? We'll see. But then we've got George Oscar now moving up to fourth and showing some really good form over the first two rounds. Antonelli, Albon, and we go down the field. It's good to see actually Williams scoring some points. Albon there, Ocon, and Lance Stroll with 10 points in 8th position in the championship.
None of you predicted that, just to clarify that. None of you predicted that.
Exactly. Has anyone got any comments on the driver's standings? Any surprises that you've seen, or everything is expected?
Not necessarily the drivers, but I think it's interesting where Ferrari's at the moment, given the disqualification in the last one. I don't think anyone would have predicted that they are equal with, is it Williams at the moment? Equal fourth at the moment, aren't they? So I look at that and I go, from the constructors' side, I don't think we would have put them that down. I think we thought they would be fighting harder up against McLaren and Mercedes or Red Bull, but I think that at the moment they're probably less impressive overall, if I can say it that way.
When looking at Ferrari as well, it looks as though I was really surprised in regards to how well Lewis has adapted to the vehicle and so quickly. Look, there's still some teething in regards to the race engineers and the communication between the two. But we're even seeing that with Charles as well. So Charles, who's been with the team now for a long time, is still having some of those challenges with just some of the basics around that communication, being able to get the information that they need. You can see, Lewis even being courteous on the radio, but when you look at China, he'd asked for where he could improve, and he was told you could get some more pace through turn 10. He said, yeah, you've already told me that. What else can I do to improve? So it's about the information that they need. But to see Ferrari having a double disqualification in China, it really is surprising. And we're seeing, to your point, Lockie, is Williams, who is a front runner for the midfield. So you're seeing some really good performance there. I think a couple of us had them finishing midfield and leading that in 5th position. So I think the Williams crew are doing quite well as well.
Yeah, Williams have new bumper stickers as "We're number 4. We're number 4."
I think Alpine will be disappointed they haven't got points yet.
Yeah, I think Alpine. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest surprises. They're down there with no points at all, which is not what they would want for sure.
Flavio won't be happy.
Also, Ferrari. I mean, they to finish second in the constructors last year and to be. Well, they've got 17 points to their name so far after 2 rounds. So they're already, 61 points behind McLaren. And that's due to consistency. Ferrari have to have both drivers scoring points every round. Can't afford a double DNF. It's a lot of points to claw back towards the end of the season.
And to be fair, it wasn't the driver's fault either.
So they're only 14 points off first last year too. They were close.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a close finish, and happy both you and I had Ferrari finishing as the constructor champions for this year. So they're going to have to pull their finger out if you and I get some points there.
Can you go back and look? Because Dan and I did not.
No, that's
I'm pretty
correct.
sure. I'm pretty sure I had McLaren, but we'll see. But yeah, I think that the other thing, with regards to the constructors' scores at the moment, like McLaren are leading on 78 points, Mercedes 57 behind, doing really well. Like Antonelli's really pulling his weight so far. The interesting one to me is Red Bull, and they're in third position with 36 points. Every single one of those 36 points has come from Max Verstappen, one driver. So they seemingly they're going to have a difficult year. I don't know how they can continue doing that. They certainly can't expect to be able to be fighting for the constructors' championship unless they've got two drivers regularly getting points every weekend.
But if you look at that right now, that's not going to happen.
And Max, who was actively talking down the car, I think, he was quoted at the last race where saying, well, what's it going to take for you to be in the lead on this? And he goes, for everyone in front of me to DNF.
Well, got part of his wish, didn't he? Oh, they weren't in front, were they? The Ferraris.
No, but like as usual, he extracted the most out of their package. And there's no doubt Red Bull have to keep developing that car. Like they are behind. McLaren has found more pace. Mercedes has found more pace. And look, Max is doing his best, but I think there's been a few moments over the past couple of weeks, the first few rounds, where he's been visibly a little bit frustrated that he hasn't got a teammate up there somewhere in the points helping out or helping in a race. He doesn't have a blocker behind him. It's going to make life hard for Max if they want to develop the car. They need to rely on two drivers to do that effectively throughout the season, I think. So, yeah, tough for Max. He must feel a bit lonely holding that team up.
So if that brings us to that point then, does that mean that they can't build the team around Liam? And if not Liam, who?
Well, I think if we want to get into the Red Bull situation,
Why not?
I think we should be honest and say that they have zero chance of winning the constructors' title this year. I think they put themselves in a pretty tough position, and it's their own doing. It's a difficult organisation to come into as a rookie or a junior driver. They certainly haven't given Liam 1,000 kilometres of test miles in an older car to get used to their car and setup. It's very difficult for him to come in, and realistically, who knows if Yuki or Hajar or anyone, Colapinto, his name was thrown around this week already. Who knows if anyone would be faster at adapting to that car. So they put themselves in a very difficult situation. It's really hard for juniors to move from the VCARB team. Is that what they're called these days? They change the name so often. That's a very different car to drive to the Red Bull car. So moving a driver from one team to the other, there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to perform. And we've seen that with Liam. Like he's an awesome driver. He's won on the way up in every category. He's highly rated. We all know he's no slouch. But to have the struggles he's having is more of an indictment of Red Bull and that environment and that team and that car than Liam. So I really feel sorry for him. And my strong opinion is Red Bull have put themselves in this situation. They've shot themselves in the foot. And I don't see how they're easily going to get their way out of it. I feel like they're just going to, if Liam can't get up to speed in this car in Suzuka, which is a track that he knows, are they just going to write this season off and just really start pushing it on the 2026 car? Because who are they going to find to help Max out? They're not going to win a constructor's title. It just seems an absolute debacle. If I was at Red Bull management at the moment, I would be livid with what is happening with that team.
Did they soften the car?
Well, they can't. It won't be competitive. The car is built around this particular philosophy. And Max, as their lead driver, don't forget, has been driving this same regulation car for 4 or 5 years now and has won world championships with it. So it has the speed. A driver can extract the speed. It just seems to be that it's only Max because he's probably the best Formula One driver in the whole field and he can do it. Perez was actually reasonably close. Perez must be laughing his ass off. He must be at home enjoying this because they've paid him out the rest of his contract. He's probably sunning himself in his new jet and his new yacht, whatever he bought,
And
watching
listening to our
Lawson
podcast.
struggle, saying a big I told you so.
So
Hi, Sergio.
devil's advocate then, if they had promoted Sonoda and put Lawson in the Visa Cash App card, would that have made any difference?
Look, you could look at that and say it's that how long is a piece of string. But to your point, Lockie, is that Tsunoda is the tested driver. He's been driving for cash grab racing bulls for however long. And so from that perspective, he's probably the more tried and tested driver. As you move him up, he could be facing the same problems. If you look at Alex Albon in a recent interview that has been airing around him talking about the Red Bull car, he's actually been quoted as saying, this is like getting on computer, setting your mouse settings to 100% sensitivity, and then trying to pick the applications you want to open. And that's the way that this car drives. So Max is able to move that mouse around the screen accurately, whereas anyone else is doing it has struggles. So you just don't know. But from that perspective, you'd imagine that Yuki would have been the better option. I think, really, with regards to Liam, he's on a hiding to nothing. Putting him into that car is actually quite unfair, because you're expecting someone who, if we go back to Drive to Survive, they brought him in for one weekend. Max came in, ran a few test laps, then they threw Liam into the car and said, give it a go. He was, I think, 2/10 off the time on that test track at Silverstone, and they've gone close enough. So so Christian's gone, I'm happy. So if I look at Christian, I mean, I know a lot of people say how cutthroat he can be, but also from the other perspective is, if he likes you as a driver, he will back you and he will give you the opportunity to perform. It's what the rest of Red Bull management, it's what Helmut Marko will be putting the pressure in regards to whether or not you cut Liam from the team.
Yeah, because it's not all Horner's decision, is it?
No,
Whether he's
not at
backing
all.
or not.
And, that's Horner will be supportive if you're doing well. Like any good manager of a team, team principal will do that. But like, just looking at the way Fred Vasseur talks about his drivers, or Toto and his support of drivers, they seem to be much more supportive environments for drivers getting up to speed and whatever. Whereas Red Bull's cutthroat. If you don't do a good job, your ass is on the line. You're out. Like, so what do they do now? Surely you can't kick Liam out after 2 rounds, especially in the last round as well. They threw a different setup at the car. It wasn't all him. They were trying something different. They go to Suzuka now, which is a track he knows really well. They've already talked about the first 5 races or so of the season being the flyaway races before they go back to Europe. I would assume they would give him at least those first races before they get back to Europe, to then have a discussion about progression, how he's going, whatever. And if maybe he gets good results before they get back to Europe. But surely you can't put Yuki in now after 2 races, because what if the same thing happens to Yuki?
Well, I agree with you. I think he should have 5 races at least.
Yeah, I think he needs to be given a proper chance, for sure. A proper chance. But that interview you mentioned, Christian, was the High Performance podcast. I think it was about a year ago they filmed with Alex Albon, who was talking about the car and the environment. And he described that environment, going into that team and trying to keep up with Max, who was used to this very edgy car, as extremely difficult. Like, it killed him over that season, and he had a year off. And he talked about that during that podcast. It's not a comforting environment for a driver to be in. It's not a particularly supportive one. Not that I'm saying it should be, but when you're a rookie and you're coming into that team new, he certainly didn't make it sound like there was a lot of support there from the team. Coaching, psychological, etc. Like, he was in there on his own trying to improve.
And if you're getting the results like Max was, and you're getting, and you can make it work like Max does, then it's not so bad. But for someone else, it's must be quite soul destroying.
And Max has been there from the start of these regulations in that team, and he's grown up with them. He's worked on that car with his technique, which Alex said was a little bit unique. So it's pretty hard to find someone to come in and match him or do better than him. They won't expect anyone to do better than Max, but they'll definitely want someone within 2 or 3 tenths, ideally. Even 4 or 5 tenths in quali would be probably acceptable to them at the moment. But I don't know. Really, really tough for Red Bull, and really tough for Liam Lawson.
And I think if you look in regards to the change in management style, and Happy, you spoke to that with Red Bull being so cutthroat. Is this the end of that reign of that cutthroat era? A lot of the older racers looking and saying F1's changed, F1's softened, but you've got Red Bull being so cutthroat. You've got Alpine with Flavio Briatore coming in, who's very cutthroat as well, and we'll see more of that, I think, as we go forward. But you're seeing the likes of your Fred Vasseurs, your Toto Wolffs, your Zach Browns, and your Andrea Stellas, coming in and embracing the team, creating a culture of no blame, creating a culture of support and inclusion around, and bringing everyone along for the journey. And we're seeing those results start to happen now. There is the argument that McLaren needs to start to be a little bit more firm in regards to which driver they're supporting. And obviously it's very early in the season to work out who that's going to be. But, from that perspective, is they're saying we have 2 number 1 drivers. It's about the development and the support of those drivers.
Yeah, I think it comes from the top down. So unless Marco or Horner were to leave, I don't think it's going to change. But I think your observations are right. Like, Zach in particular has been pretty vocal so far this season about their efforts to lock in performance, high-performing staff, senior staff, their drivers long-term, and building that positive McLaren culture. You don't hear words like that from Red Bull. They don't act like that in front of the camera. So, I think it's tough. It sounds like a difficult environment to work in. I imagine when they're winning, everyone's quite happy, but the real test comes when you're not winning. You've got a new driver in the team. You've got one driver who's scored all of 36 points so far in the Constructors' Championship, and you're still half the points of McLaren ahead of you because they've got 2 drivers who are delivering. Tough situation, a really tough ship to turn around. So that's why, I'm thinking about 2026, new regulations, new car, new start. Hopefully they've got a vehicle that is compliant for 2 drivers to drive. Whether Max is there or not, that's another story altogether. But I think some big changes need to happen in that team.
I think Christian does send encouraging messages to his staff. It's normally by direct text message, though, I think.
Text message.
I don't think all of them get the same messages down. They might get separate ones.
There was certainly some encouragement in there, I can tell you that.
Well, hang on.
Group chat.
Those texts,
You
and
can't
at least one
unsee that.
image.
You
At
can't
least one
unsee
image
that.
went around. You can't unsee that picture, no. Lucky we're not a visual medium.
But Happy, you make a really good point. And as you look at this, if Red Bull is not going to get the Constructors this year and Max is going to be just fighting for every single point, is as to whether or not they're going to retain Max as well. Now, Max has said that he's with Red Bull at the moment, but the vultures are circling, and there's talk of money. We've seen with Aston Martin talk of money being thrown around. We've seen Toto Wolff even talking around Max's at the same time. Now, I don't think that Toto is going to be pursuing that. Toto would be very happy with the team that he's got now. He's got Handsome George in place, being able to be the steady lead of that ship, and to be able to take Kimi under his wing and help him develop and grow stronger as a driver. You've got Kimi, who's actually showing real good performance very early on. And so you've got a team where for the next 5 to 7 years, you've got some real strength there and can develop and grow. But, if you are Max and the team's not performing, you're struggling to perform and you're getting offers left, right and centre, what do you do?
You talk about Max sort of having grown up with not grown up, but, being involved with the development of the Red Bull car and it being set up for him and everything else. Like perhaps 26 with the new regulations is a chance for him to go, let's get on the next curve. Let's start from scratch again. It's all changing. Let's develop this new car with someone new. Maybe
Is
it's
he
not
happy
Red Bull.
there?
Yeah, possibly. That's the question. Yeah, is he happy? Like, that the whole texting, scandal with Horner. We know that Max's dad, Joss, wasn't very happy. Yeah, we're getting a glimpse into that team and the support network they seem to not have for their new drivers coming in. I know that the doors are shut at McLaren, the doors shut at Mercedes, but there are some other teams out there, like you said, Aston, with some big dollars, big plans, big budgets, maybe a much better environment. And Max knows that he's going to need a good teammate with him to help him get that title, because even if the Red Bull has one of the fastest cars, unless you've got a teammate that's in the mix helping you out in some way, swapping positions with you to give you more points in a race, for example, or being a bit of a blocker to a car behind, it just makes life more difficult. So even for him to try and win the Drivers' Championship is difficult unless you've got a fast teammate. So every driver knows they need a really good teammate. They need a teammate that's close to them, but not going to beat them, to help develop that car and help them get to that title, whether it's their own title or the constructor's title. And it just doesn't seem like he's going to get that at Red Bull. So I could totally imagine he'd be thinking about, an offer from Aston or someone else. He's had a good run at Red Bull, fantastic run at Red Bull, but would you want to stay there for your whole life? Lewis left.
But it's
And
his
you
new
only have to
teammate
look at
Alonso.
Toto.
Alonso is his new
Alonso.
teammate Alonso.
Pretty
It wouldn't
strong
be a
pairing.
bad pairing. And you only have to look Adrian Newey. I look at it in regards to it's not what's said, it's what's not said. And Adrian, being the consummate gentleman, has gone to Aston. He has intimated that he wasn't happy at Red Bull. And so if you read between the lines, there's reasons why he left Red Bull. And, now with him at Aston, again, the lead designer across the entire F1 paddock with Aston Martin, Fernando being at Aston Martin, Max coming across, it would be a very strong lineup. The only blocker to that would be Lance, where if he's wanting to race, and as long as he's wanting to race, Lawrence is going to back him to be the number one driver for Aston Martin.
Max wouldn't care if he wins a championship in a Red Bull top or an Aston Martin top.
He just wants to win.
No, he wants to win a championship. Exactly. So, look, everyone needs a change in their life every now and again. So it definitely wouldn't surprise me. And, even looking at Lewis going to Ferrari, I know Ferrari is that halo brand that everyone wants to be able to win a championship with or drive for. Just to say driven for Ferrari as a Formula One driver is a massive, massive thing. So, yeah, I could completely understand if he'd be looking for some sort of fresh change. He's been with Red Bull for a long time. So I'd love to see it too. Like, who wouldn't love to see Max going to Aston Martin with, big budget, new team, great facilities, maybe Alonso as a teammate, whatever. How good would it be? It would be fantastic.
It would be almost unstoppable. So with predictions on big moves to other teams, I think that gives us a perfect opportunity to wrap up this episode. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next lap. That's the checkered flag for this episode of the Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Want to take it to the next level? Join the Downshift pit crew by supporting us through Patreon. You'll get exclusive content and help fuel the show to keep us pushing flat out every week. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.